Right now on Morning News Now, breaking news, Russian media reporting opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died in prison. Also this morning, courtroom drama. District Attorney Fani Willis expected back on the witness stand in Georgia in a hearing that could impact Donald Trump's state election interference case.
You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
The defiant testimony from both Fani Willis and the special prosecutor, whose relationship could get Willis disqualified from the case. And in New York, it could be decision day for former President Trump's multi-million-dollar civil fraud trial. We have team coverage. Plus, it's captivating and controversial. We'll give you a sneak peek at OpenAI's new text-to-video tool that's raising concerns in the creative world. And from hoop dreams to reality, college basketball player Caitlin Clark, now the women's all-time leading scorer. We will take you to Iowa for more on her incredible record-breaking game.
Good morning. Good to have you with us on a busy Friday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We begin with that breaking news out of Russia this morning.
Jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died. That is according to Russian media citing the Russian prison service. It said that Navalny, quote, felt unwell and almost immediately lost consciousness. Navalny, who is a vocal critic of President Putin, was serving a 19-year sentence on charges that he said were politically motivated.
NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel takes a look at Navalny's life.
As Russia's leading opposition figure, Alexei Navalny piled pressure on the Kremlin and put a target on his back. Born in 1976 in what was then the Soviet Union, Navalny trained as a lawyer and rose to prominence as a political blogger. In 2011, he started the Anti-Corruption Foundation, which exposed the extravagant wealth of Russian officials, including President Vladimir Putin.
The biggest thing that Putin is afraid of is public discontent in Russia, and that is why it's so afraid of opposition leaders.
Navalny's and Putin's stars were intertwined. As Putin tightened his grip on power, Navalny became a leading figure at anti-government protests. We will force them to live by the law because we hold the power here, he shouted. He was arrested countless times and turned attacks to his advantage. In 2017, after announcing his intentions to run for president, Navalny was attacked with green dye twice. Maybe the Kremlin thinks that I will not record videos with a green face, he said, but now even more people will watch. In 2019, as Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation gained support nationally, police raided their offices and arrested several activists, including, of course, Navalny. But in 2020, his life was threatened like never before. On a plane traveling from Siberia to Moscow, Navalny became deathly ill. He fell into a coma and was put on a ventilator. While recovering in a German hospital, investigators revealed he had been poisoned with Novichok, a Soviet-era neurotoxin. Navalny blamed Putin for the attack, a claim the Kremlin denies. Miraculously, Navalny recovered and participated in the investigation into his own poisoning, documenting the whole thing on social media. Despite the threats against his life, in January 2021, Navalny and his wife Yulia voluntarily returned to Moscow, where he was immediately arrested, ostensibly for violating the terms of a 2014 embezzlement case. Once in jail, he was tried and sentenced to more than 9 years in a maximum security prison. Navalny said the charges were politically motivated. But even behind bars, he found ways to make his voice heard, using social media to protest the Ukraine war and needle those in power. His legacy is one of defiance, a constant thorn in the side of the Kremlin. Richard Engel, NBC News.
All right, thanks to Richard for that report, and we will stay on it throughout the morning. Now let's head to Atlanta, where this morning Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis will be back on the stand following her fiery testimony yesterday. Willis is the DA who charged former President Donald Trump with trying to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results.
Willis took the stand in her own defense over misconduct allegations that could lead to her removal from the case. In a contentious back and forth, she acknowledged having a relationship with Nathan Wade, who she hired as special prosecutor in Georgia's case against the former president, but she denied the relationship was improper. The hearing focused on whether Willis benefited financially in the form of romantic getaways. Here are some of the highlights from yesterday's dramatic testimony.
Mr. Wade visits you at the place you laid your head.
When?
Has he ever visited you at the place you laid your head?
So let's be clear, because you lied in this. Let me tell you which one you lied in. Right here. I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie. It is a lie.
Ms. Willis? Mr. Sena, thank you. We're going to take 5 minutes.
It's highly offensive when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them.
Ms. Willis is a very, as am I, we're private people. Not, our relationship wasn't a secret. It was just private.
I kept something private. That's my private life. Is not any mystery to anyone. It's like a woman doesn't have the right to keep her private life private. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
All right, let's break it all down. We're joined by NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander outside the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Thank you both for being here. Blaine, let's start with you. Before yesterday, there were some questions about whether Willis would testify at all. She did. We'll hear from her again today. Walk us through the dramatic day in the courtroom and what were the big takeaways.
Well, the biggest thing was it was a surprise to everybody who was sitting in that courtroom, everybody who was watching it live at home or wherever, and even to members of her legal team who at the very time that she walked into that courtroom were arguing to try and keep her from the stand. And so you saw this moment, this kind of dramatic moment play out where she walked into the courtroom, preceded by her security, of course. She walked into the courtroom as Anna Cross was arguing that the subpoena should be quashed. They kind of met eyes at one point, and Willis made it clear that she wanted to take the stand. She basically walked in and said, let's go. And then about 2 hours of testimony ensued from there. So I think that it was very clear that she walked in ready to have this conversation. These allegations have been out there for more than a month now. Aside from her speech at the MLK Day ceremony and her written motion response, she hasn't addressed them. So this really was the first time that she was coming in and able to, as you could see, express some of her frustration with what she saw in that motion. Now, as for the substance of what she said, she maintained, as did Nathan Wade, that their relationship began after she hired him to work on the Trump Georgia election interference case. So after November of 2021, she said that they never cohabitated together. And one thing that they both made a very strong point of driving home is that either they split their costs evenly or she reimbursed him for travel. Now, that's a very big piece, of course, because the entire underpinning of the defense's argument is that she improperly financially benefited from the trips she's taking. She said, no, I paid him back. I paid him back in cash, so she doesn't have receipts for it, but that she paid him back roughly everything that he spent for that, and it was split evenly, guys.
Danny, let's bring you in here. So as Blaine just laid out, I mean, she comes in and physically takes the stand as her lawyers are trying to explain why she should not have to do so. Then it gets quite combative. Many times people would not be advised to take the stand in a case like this. What do you make of the fact that she did so, and did she help or hurt herself?
She helped herself in terms of she made some great speeches. There's some great sound that you saw. She stood up for herself. But did she testify well as a witness? No, not by any metric. She didn't answer questions. She answered the questions she wanted to answer. She had to be brought back onto the rails by the judge, who I think the judge should have done more often. And sometimes she was so rambling, she forgot what the original question was. She had a mission. She was going to make a statement, whether or not she was asked the question that she wanted to answer or not. So in a strange way, was she technically a good witness? Did she follow the rules of evidence? Absolutely not. And she knows that. She's obviously the elected DA of Fulton County. But was it effective? It may have been. By rambling on and taking up so much time, she fatigued the judge. I felt she fatigued Ashley Merchant, who was the main lawyer questioning her. And it may have saved the day for her because by the end of the day, I mean, they didn't really get to the core of their burden of proof. And by that, I mean the defense. showing, or at least having to show, or getting to admit, that's what they wanted to do, is get her to admit that there was some benefit given to her by Nathan Wade. And I don't think that they got there, but it's not because Fani Willis testified properly the way witnesses are supposed to.
Let's talk more about that, because the goal here for Trump and his co-defendants, they want her disqualified from the case. Just how high is that bar to have Willis and Wade disqualified from the case? And do you see anything that reaches that bar?
I really thought at the beginning of the day that the defense had a real shot. I also believe Nathan Wade's testimony was not very credible, because at the core of this issue is a not very credible proposition. A lot of people today are talking about, hey, man, what's the big deal? People deal in cash. They have large amounts of cash. Number one, I agree with you. By the way, you know who doesn't agree with you? Law enforcement. Law enforcement uses large amounts of cash routinely as evidence of criminality. You know what I've never seen in a police report? Suspect had drugs and checkbooks. They never care about checkbooks. Cash is evidence of criminality. Not that there's any evidence of criminality here, but my point is, I think there's nothing wrong with cash. Law enforcement disagrees. The other part of this is not about whether it's okay or not okay to have cash. It's about whether the explanation that Fani Willis has for never having received anything of benefit from Nathan Wade is credible. And I ask you, of all the dates, I ask you, Savannah, did you ever, after a trip with your husband, peel off a wad of thousands and reimburse him for a trip to Aruba? I have yet to find anyone who's done that. Maybe Fani Willis is the only person to have ever done that. That doesn't make it credible.
Blaine, as we mentioned earlier, Willis set to return to the stand today. What can we expect in the courtroom? How is this going to get underway, and when could we get a ruling?
Well, I think almost to Danny's point, we're going to hear her addressing a lot of the things that perhaps some people did find less than credible. We know that she's going to be back on the stand. She's going to be the first witness. Court gets underway at 9 a.m. We know that her side is going to spend about 4 or 5 hours calling witnesses of their own. One of them will be Fani Willis's father. He's going to testify remotely from California. And so we're certainly going to see possibly some more fiery testimony, but her kind of making some of her own points in this. And then in terms of a ruling, we know that the judge isn't going to rule from the bench. We already know that. It's possible that this extends into early next week as well. So what we think the judge will do, we know the judge will do, is go back, consider the evidence, and issue a written ruling at some point in the days to come, guys.
All right. Blaine Alexander, thank you so much. Danny, stick around. We're going to have you talk about our next story.
Yeah, meanwhile, that's here in New York. A verdict is expected today in the $370 million civil fraud trial against former President Trump.
The verdict is going to be delivered by Judge Arthur Engoron, capping a trial that began more than 4 months ago. Trump and his company are accused of inflating the value of business assets in order to get better terms on loans. The judge has already ruled that Mr. Trump inflated his wealth on financial statements. Today's verdict will determine the penalties, exactly how much Trump and his organization could owe.
The multi-million-dollar lawsuit was brought on by New York Attorney General Letitia James. In addition to the proposed $370 million in penalties, James is also looking to ban the former president from conducting future business in New York's real estate industry. For more on what we can expect on this one today, we are joined by NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian. And as we said, Danny Savalas is still here on set with us. Yasmin, I'll start with you. Good morning. What can we expect from the judge today? Could this be a real day of reckoning for the former president and his company?
I mean, a huge day of reckoning. If you think about, I think, the former president's brand and who he was before he was president of the United States and who he has based his entire identity on his real estate empire here in New York City. And he did through the 80s, the 90s as well. He's written multiple books about it. Judge Engoron has already said that the former president and his business is engaged in fraud. This is dating back, of course, to the trial that began on October 7th, in which the former president, along with his 3 children, testified in this trial. The decision is set to come out today. And as you reminded folks, and I'll remind you once again, AG Letitia James seeking $370 million, along with the former president and his businesses being banned forever from the New York State real estate industry. This is going to be, and I cannot say this enough, I know Danny has said this on air as well, and he can back me up on this, a major gut punch, the former president of the United States, if in fact he has to pay out $370 million and is no longer able to engage in real estate businesses here in New York City. And you couple that, guys, by the way, because I was on air with you with the E. Jean Carroll case as well, with the $83 million he's going to have to pay out with E. Jean Carroll and these multiple cases that are continuing to go on. Former president has an uphill battle here, but this is going to be major today as we await this decision from Judge Engoron.
So, Danny, of course, one big headline will be the number that he'll have to pay. But this idea that he could be banned from New York real estate, what would be the ripple effect of that for Trump and his business? And does he have appeal options?
Well, first, what would that ban even look like? It could be thou shalt not perform business activities in New York, or it could have to do with, remember, they've canceled the business charter. So is that canceling the business or even the assets, meaning the buildings? So who ends up owning those buildings? What happens to these companies? Do they get taken over by something else? It's really going to be interesting to see how this remedy is crafted. And then, of course, appeal options, absolutely. And in fact, I might even expect a stay of all this execution of all of these proceedings while this goes up to the appellate division in the First Department on appeal. And I think that the defense will get a stay. So this is probably not going to be something that immediately goes into effect. And even if it did, it's such a major sea change in the corporate structure that it would be difficult to do overnight. So whatever Justice Engoron decides, it's probably not going to be something that we're going to see the ripple effects of right away, because there's going to be an appeal right away. And I believe they get an automatic appeal up to the Court of Appeals as well.
Yasmin, let's once again switch gears, as we've been doing for the last few minutes here on this show, to talk about a different issue. Yesterday, when we were talking to you, you were outside the courthouse. That was not for the civil fraud trial that's coming to an end, presumably today. That was for this hush money trial that now we know will get underway next month. It's where we saw the former president yesterday in court. The presiding judge denied this attempt to have the criminal charges dismissed. What else happened inside that courtroom yesterday?
Savannah, he denied it immediately. Literally 5 minutes in yesterday, he said, motion denied, motion to dismiss denied. And then the rest was really kind of about back and forth when it comes to Q&A for jury selection. March 25th, the date is set. That is when the trial is beginning. And it was interesting because the judge in that case actually mentioned that he had spoken to Judge Chutkan to figure out the date for this trial and recognized that they could clear the way for this trial to move forward on March 25th because it seems the D.C. case has been stalled because of the immunity case that is still pending. Obviously, with the Supreme Court, we know we're awaiting that response from Jack Smith. But that being said, March 25th, date is set. It's going to last about 6 weeks or so, the judge said. They talked a lot about Q&A when it comes to the jury selection. One of the things that they dialed in on, guys, which I thought was really interesting, was where you're getting your news and media from. And they talked a lot about wanting to ask the jurors kind of their political affiliation to understand whether or not they really support the former president of the United States or not. They also wanted to ask the jurors if, in fact, they believe the 2020 election was stolen. There was some pushback for that from the former president's attorneys. That took up the majority, I have to say, of the rest of the hearing yesterday. But we really have to look forward to 6 weeks of the trial in which the former president is there every single day. Just a reminder, as we talked about yesterday, this is a criminal trial. So the former president has to be there. And he's possibly looking at 4 years in prison with a Class C felony.
So, Danny, Trump has acknowledged repaying his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, classifying these as legal payments. Real quickly here, what's his defense?
That was one of several defenses that they used yesterday to try and get the case thrown out. And as Yasmin pointed out, it was denied right away. But that will remain on the record for appeal. They would have a better shot on appeal. Among them were that he's been charged with too many counts for one crime. So, for example, if somebody robs a bank, you can't charge them with 4 different crimes that are essentially the same. You robbed a bank was robbed, there was a robbery at the bank and you did it. You can't take one event and extract from that several different crimes. Related to that is the theory that, hey, Trump paid this attorney out of his personal funds for personal services. That should not be imputed to the business. I think the other courts have already dismissed that idea. So most of these arguments are probably not going to make any headway. They didn't make any headway in the motion to dismiss.
All right.
Danny Ceballos, thank you for covering it all this morning. Yasmin, thank you very much. Well, an FBI informant is facing 2 federal charges for allegedly lying to the agency about President Joe Biden and his son Hunter during the 2020 presidential campaign. The Justice Department says 43-year-old Alexander Smirnov has been arrested in Las Vegas.
The 37-page indictment comes from special counsel David Weiss, who was appointed to look into Hunter Biden. The indictment alleges that Smirnov provided false derogatory information to the FBI by claiming to the FBI FBI that the Ukrainian energy company Burisma once hired Hunter Biden because they said he would, quote, protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems. Smirnov is also accused of falsely telling the FBI that Burisma officials told him that they had paid the president and his son $5 million. It was this account that has become a key component behind Republicans' ongoing impeachment inquiry into President Biden. A detention hearing for Smirnov has been scheduled for a federal court in Las Vegas next Tuesday. New details are emerging in the investigation into that deadly shooting at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade. Police are now saying they have 2 juveniles in custody in connection with the shooting and that the tragedy was the result of a dispute between several people.
One person was killed and 22 others were wounded or injured during the shooting. Police identified the person who was fatally shot as Lisa Lopez Galvan. Her siblings spoke with NBC News yesterday and shared their thoughts about how she should be remembered.
She just brought people together. She did it to bring happiness, and even in sad times in other instances. That's who she was. She wanted pure joy.
She's just not a statistic. Lisa was a lot more than just a number. She was a very wholesome, very caring, very loving individual.
NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins us now from Kansas City with more on this. Ellison, good morning. So police say they have at least 2 people in custody in connection with the shooting, but we know there's juveniles, which means information can be limited. So what do we know about the suspects and a possible motive?
Right. So police say right now the people that they have in custody, 2 of them are juveniles. Previously, they'd said they had 3 people in custody tied to this shooting. We don't have specific details on names or ages, and that's because they have not yet been formally charged in this case. But at a press conference yesterday, the Kansas City police chief said in part, we have subjects detained, 2 of which are juveniles. We are working to determine the involvement of others. She was then asked by reporters there, does that mean possibly you think there are other suspects, other shooters still out there currently among the public? She said this in part, quote, we are not closing the door and giving direct numbers on this. This is still an active investigation. We are asking the public if anyone witnessed the shooting directly to still contact police. We want to make sure that anyone who is responsible for yesterday is brought to justice. At that press conference, I asked the police chief if they knew these individuals in custody, either Kansas City Police or any other law enforcement agencies prior to this. The police chief said that, as well as the relationship between these individuals, is still under investigation. But as you said, Savannah and Joe, they say they have confidently ruled out that this could possibly be terrorism or some sort of homegrown violent extremism. They say this act of violence stemmed from a dispute between individuals. Savannah, Joe?
Ellison, we mentioned that we now know the person who was killed. They've been identified. This is a popular local radio DJ, Lisa Lopez Galvan. I know you've been talking to people in the community. Just a moment ago, we heard from some siblings. What have you learned about her?
Yeah, she was the co-host of a popular radio show at KKFI, a local station here. It was called A Taste of Tejano. She was very well known and beloved, particularly within Kansas City's Hispanic community. She was married for 22 years. She had 2 adult children. She was a sister, a friend to many. Her co-host, who's worked with her for the last 2.5 years, let us come to the station yesterday to hear a little more about her, to see where she worked. I want you to listen to what he had to say, because he can explain it better than I can. Listen.
I don't think really she had acquaintances. Anytime you knew her, she always treated you like you were her closest friend. You were her focus. And she has a lovely husband, 2 lovely children, a great family, and they were all just so kind and so honored to have such a great sister. You know, she was always the light of the party. She was always the life of the party. Was always down for a great time, and she'll be missed, definitely. I mean, she just showed great.
When you think back to the last Tuesday you spent together, have you replayed those last moments just again and again? I mean, how do you begin to process this? Multiple times.
Mm-hmm. You know, we walked down in the parking lot from the station here, and I told her, you know, be careful, have fun, be careful, and I'll see you next Tuesday. She said, okay, bye, and jumped in her truck and was excited to go see her Chiefs. She's an avid Chiefs fan, and she loved her Chiefs, so she was where she wanted to be. She was in a happy place.
When we talked to him, he kept smiling as he talked about Lisa because he said she was just so good and so happy and so full of life that is how he remembers her, not the way that she died. This morning, a GoFundMe that was set up to benefit the family. There were 2 large donations listed, $50,000 each, $100,000 in total. And the name on those donations was Taylor Swift. Our team spoke to her publicist this morning, and they confirmed that she made those donations to Lisa Lopez Galvan's family, hoping to help them as they move forward from all of this. Savannah, Joe.
All right. Clearly a person who impacted so many people in such a positive way. Ellison Barber, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Let's switch gears now and get a check on your morning news now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. We've got a couple of systems that we're tracking that could bring the potential of snow to some folks here as we gear up for our weekend. We've got an exiting Clipper system. We talked about this yesterday. It's out of here, but we're still seeing some of these lingering cold winds that are leaving us with some snow showers remaining downwind of the lakes. It's going to be a little blustery out there for folks that live in the Northeast. You'll be able to notice just how strong and cold those winds are. So those will stick with us for a little while. But like I said, that system's on the way out. But we're gearing up for our next system that's going to work out of the plains, eventually impact folks from Missouri to the mid-Atlantic. And we've got the alerts to prove it. Right now, there's some alerts up out west, but we've also got these stretched across parts of the Midwest and into the mid-Atlantic. 47 million total people are included in these across the country. And here's the system that we're going to be tracking through the day today, into the overnight hours tonight, and into early tomorrow before it quickly pushes out. As you gear up for your first half of today, it's going to be basically parts of Missouri to the Ohio Valley that we'll see some of that snow working through. We'll also see a couple of spots dealing with some rain. You can see places like Knoxville down to Memphis could see some of the rain, but the snow is going to be focused across parts of the Ohio Valley. It'll be light to moderate, and then early tomorrow morning, you might notice a little bit of snow along the I-95 corridor. New York to Washington, D.C. could pick up a couple of inches. I'll show you those amounts here in a moment, but then it slowly starts to wrap up, and we'll just be left with some scattered snow showers for the second half of your Saturday. There's those totals as promised. Places like Philadelphia, 2 to 4 inches possible. I think some of those higher amounts in the higher elevations could be upwards of 5 inches. Overall, places like New York, 1 to 3 inches. You might see some flurries in the city early tomorrow morning. Indianapolis, you could pick up a couple of inches as well. Savannah is grinning because I said flurries in New York City.
We're not done yet.
Not happy about the next storm system, though, out west. I'm sure we've got a couple of them at that. We're going to see, again, really heavy rain, guys, and multiple systems that are going to bring big batches of that rain to the already soaked west coast. And this is going to be something we'll deal with over the next couple of days. Flash flooding will be a problem, specifically in California. A couple of inches of rain here through the weekend.
All right. Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, going off-brand to stay on budget. More on the shopping strategy that more and more Americans are turning to.
Up first, though, after the break, more on the breaking news we brought you at the top of the hour. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died. More on what we're learning when we return.
We're back with more on our top story this morning, the death of jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny.
The news was reported by Russian media citing the Russian prison service. The vocal Kremlin critic was serving a 19-year sentence in a remote prison in the country.
NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from Kyiv. Richard, first of all, just what are we learning about the circumstances surrounding the death of Navalny and just your thoughts right now?
So we're hearing from the prison officials as being quoted by Russian state media. So you have to take that with an enormous grain of salt. But the official account is that Alexei Navalny, who was recently transferred to this penal colony north of the Arctic Circle in Siberia, he was only transferred there in early December. Actually, he went missing for a while, and his own lawyers didn't know where he was. His conditions since he was arrested have been getting worse and worse, and this penal colony is known to be particularly harsh. It's a frozen gulag in Siberia. It's often called the polar wolf is its nickname, and it's a facility for men, houses about 1,000 inmates. And according to the official account, this morning, Alexei Navalny was taking a walk that he immediately began to feel unwell, quickly lost consciousness, that prison medical staff reacted, but that they were unable to revive him. and that he died. Vladimir Putin has been informed of his death, according to Russian state media. But the team of his own inner circle have not yet confirmed it, and they are immediately casting doubt on this description of events, the official account by the Russian authorities. One of Navalny's top aides said, "This is, if it is true, and we don't know if it's true, and his lawyer is on his way to the penal colony now, that it is not a case of Navalny died, but Putin killed Navalny." And I'm in Ukraine right now, and the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, just said a short while ago, weighing in on this, that it is, quote, obvious that Putin killed Navalny, that Putin does not care who dies. All he wants to do is maintain his position of power.
Richard, tell us any early reaction we've heard from the U.S. or anything else from Moscow.
So we have not heard anything official from Moscow except this acknowledgement. I suspect we'll be hearing more throughout the day. We are starting to hear from Navalny's supporters. They are accusing Vladimir Putin of orchestrating this, if not directly, if not having him killed today or poisoned in the recent time frame here, but of arresting him, sending him into horrible conditions that were getting worse and worse over time, and contributing his death through exhaustion and poor treatment. The details are unclear. We may get an official Russian autopsy, but it's very hard to believe, particularly these days, what is coming out of Russian state channels, especially when it comes to Alexei Navalny, who was the most outspoken critic, the most feared critic by Vladimir Putin in Russian society. Someone who was not afraid to challenge Putin directly, was not afraid to challenge the entire Kremlin. And it is not just Putin who wields power in Russia. There are many powerful oligarchs. There are many people around Putin who can also influence, can also wield a tremendous amount of influence.
So, Richard, you've been covering Navalny for years. Talk more about the legacy he leaves behind. And with the state of things right now, is there anyone who could even begin to fill his shoes as a critic of Putin?
There is Karamurza, who's another leader who, like Vladimir Karamurza, who's someone I've known for quite a long time as well, who followed Navalny's example. There are critics in Russia who live in exile. So there are people like Garry Kasparov, the chess grandmaster, who is a fierce opponent of Putin, but who lives in the West and is working against Putin and against the Kremlin from the outside, with conferences, with events, with speaking, with political activism. Navalny didn't want to do that. He wanted to stay in the country. So he was poisoned. He had to leave Russia to get medical treatment in Germany after he was poisoned with Novichok, which is a very lethal poison. It didn't kill him. He was extraordinarily healthy at the time. It was something of a miraculous recovery. But then, even after he'd been poisoned, he decided to go back because he didn't want to be an opposition member in exile. Now, maybe that was too brave. Maybe that was the wrong decision, or maybe his legacy will be stronger through his death and through his martyrdom. So we don't know exactly what the long-term legacy will be. But when he went back, that was a very decisive moment, because he knew, everybody knew, that he would be arrested as soon as he hit Russian territory.
Richard Engel, we very much appreciate you and your expertise making the time to join us on this breaking story this morning. Thank you very much.
We are learning new details on the potential Russian threat to the U.S. that had members of Congress raising alarms this week. 3 U.S. officials have now told NBC News that Russia is developing a space-based nuclear weapon designed to target U.S. satellites. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has the latest.
The White House confirmed that it's monitoring Russia's development of what it called a troubling anti-satellite capability, but cautioned it is not a threat to Americans.
We are not talking about a weapon that can be used to attack human beings or cause physical destruction here on Earth.
NBC News has learned new details about that capability, that it's a Russian nuclear-powered space asset that could be weaponized, according to a U.S. official and a congressional official familiar with the intelligence. It is not a nuclear bomb that Russia is trying to send up in space.
It is not an active capability, and it has not yet been deployed.
Experts have said a nuclear-fueled satellite might be able to carry a high-powered jammer that could block out a wide array of communications and other signals. Revelations come just hours after the House Intelligence Committee chairman, Republican Mike Turner, issued a cryptic warning demanding the White House declassify intelligence about the unspecified threat. The White House met with House leaders about it.
I've got great faith in what the administration is currently doing to try to address this matter.
In 2022, NBC News' cameras were the first ever allowed inside the U.S. Space Command in Colorado. General Stephen Whiting speaking to NBC's Tom Costello.
We don't want there to be a war in space, but if others choose to start a war there, we'll be ready.
All of it as Russian President Vladimir Putin is raising eyebrows, weighing in on the 2024 election, saying he would prefer President Biden over Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. Saying Biden is more experienced, more predictable. He is an old-school politician. Mr. Trump calling that a compliment.
The only president in the last 5 that hasn't given Russia anything is a president known as Donald J. Trump.
And this rebuke from the White House.
Mr. Putin should just stay out of our elections.
Our thanks to Peter Alexander for that report. Senate leaders will likely receive their own briefing on the national security threat when they return from their recess.
Coming up after the break, retaliation in the Red Sea.
When we come back, an NBC News exclusive, what we're learning about an American cyber attack on an Iranian ship. This is Morning News Now. We're back with exclusive reporting on a recent American covert operation that targeted an Iranian vessel in the Red Sea.
3 U.S. officials have told NBC News that the U.S. carried out a cyber attack on this Iranian ship that is suspected of collecting and sharing intelligence with Yemen's Houthi rebels.
NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kuby joins us now from the Munich Security Conference in Germany. So, Courtney, what are we learning about how this operation and why this operation was carried out?
So initially, when we were hearing about this retaliatory action that the U.S. was planning to take after the death of 3 U.S. service members in Jordan, we were hearing from U.S. officials that there would be the kinetic piece, so airstrikes, but there would also be a cyber component. And we're now learning a little bit more about that cyber piece. It included a cyber attack on an Iranian military vessel more than a week ago now. The goal here was to stop this vessel from being able to collect information, targeting information, that the Iranian military was then providing to the Houthi rebels. Of course, you guys know the Houthis have been firing on commercial and even military ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden for weeks now. In fact, as recently as today, they have been trying to target these ships. Now, the majority of their efforts with anti-ship cruise missiles, drones, and even unmanned sea vessels, or what we might call sea drones, the majority of those efforts have been unsuccessful. But they have at times been able to hit some commercial ships, at times even causing fires on board and damage to those ships. The goal with this cyber attack, according to these U.S. officials, was to stop this ability to target these ships. And according to the officials, they believe their efforts here were successful.
Courtney, we actually know that Iranians had previously warned the U.S. not to attack this particular ship. What purpose are they saying it serves? To give us more information on that. And also, is the U.S. now bracing for retaliation for this attack?
Yeah, so the way that this has been working is that we've seen what the military doesn't like to talk about it, but the reality is there has been a tit for tat here. So when there has been a strike, there has generally been a counter-strike. So the U.S. is definitely concerned about the possibility for some sort of reciprocal action from Iran here. Most likely that would look like a cyber attack, but the reality is so far we've not seen anything like that.
And Courtney, quickly, could we see more cyber attacks like this in response to what's happening in the Middle East?
Absolutely. So I think that the reality is if they have seen this as a successful method or measure that's been able to stop the Iranians from gathering this information and share it with the Houthis, we should expect to see more of this.
All right, Courtney Kuby, thank you so much.
Now let's get you some economic news. Retail sales have dropped nearly a full percentage point since the start of the year. It's a sign that consumers are pulling back on their spending after years of soaring prices and inflation. Well, that is now leading to a surge in shoppers saving their pennies by buying less expensive brands. And it's all playing out on social media. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans has more.
Inflation-weary shoppers are chasing cheap and bragging about it.
I'm just not paying Tyson prices if I don't have to.
Their waffles are $1 cheaper than Eggos.
They're being called dupes, less expensive alternatives or private labels, and the social media generation loves them.
Elf is in their dupe era. Let's compare a $5 Stanley Cup dupe to the real thing.
It's kind of flipping the script on our parents' generation keeping up with the Joneses. This is buying an inexpensive thing to keep up and be cool.
Exactly. It's an interesting flip of the script. With the levels of inflation that we've been dealing with in the last few years, this is a clear response to that kind of economic pressure.
After years of higher prices and shrinking packaging, consumers now have the upper hand, and retailers know it. Target this week expanding its store brand of items that sell for less than name brands to more than 2,000 items. Chinese super discount retailer Temu running 3 Super Bowl ads to reach consumers who are just sick of high prices. Companies acknowledging their customers' weariness. Coke and McDonald's reporting sales fell after they raised prices. So did Kraft Heinz.
The consumers are looking for better value in all the choices they're making.
Newly frugal consumers may slow price hikes, but economists say don't expect prices to go back down to pre-pandemic levels, as deflation would be an economic headache of a different kind. Christine Romans, NBC News, New York.
Coming up, is it a tool or a threat?
OpenAI is showing off a new program. It's meant to turn text prompts into video. You're looking at one of those right now. We're going to give you a sneak peek and why creatives are so concerned. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. OpenAI is releasing samples of its newest text-to-video program, and it may be the end of the phrase, seeing is believing.
Take a look at this clip. While it may look like Tokyo, coated in a blanket of snow with cherry blossoms on the trees, it is totally fake. It was created by the makers of ChatGPT using a new program called Sora.
NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung joins us with a closer look at this technology. Brian, thanks for being here. So just for somebody who maybe isn't a ChatGPT user or AI user at all, explain how this works, like just how simple it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. All you do is you put in the text prompt for what you want this tool to generate, and it'll create up to a minute video for it. And this is coming from the creators of ChatGPT, so that chat box where you just kind of just respond to a robot. Then they also had DALL-E, which you can create images. So this is the natural evolution, creating videos. But look at that woolly mammoth. This is a bird. Again, these are not real creatures, not shot on real cameras. So you can imagine a lot of filmmakers, VFX folks kind of concerned about this. But there are some limitations to this. Here's an example of some wolf puppies. You can see they're kind of like blending together. It looks kind of creepy, right? So there are limitations. They say it can't really do a good job with seeing how different objects or people interact with each other. But nonetheless, I mean, the woolly mammoth video is still blowing my mind. It looks so real, but it's all fake. It's all AI generated.
And we also know even if something looks kind of fake, it can still go viral on social media with people believing it. So there's worries, especially in an election year, that it's going to be used for nefarious purposes. What does the company say about how it plans to stop that? Can it stop it?
Yeah, and it's important to note that OpenAI told NBC News that they're not planning on releasing this to the public soon. So what you saw were demos. They're basically inviting policymakers and those in the industry to kind of opine through the testing purposes, which again is not released to the public. But they said in a question to NBC whether or not they were going to police these using the same guardrails that they've been doing for OpenAI already. They said, quote, they'll be watching for extreme violence, sexual content, hateful imagery, celebrity likeness, or the IP of others. But we've seen in other cases of AI uses of deepfake porn, right, with Taylor Swift. So whether or not these guardrails are enough right now is very much an open question. But OpenAI says that they want to invite these policymakers to be part of that discussion so that once this is released to the public, that won't be an issue.
So this was a huge sticking point, right? I mean, AI is a sticking point all over the place for many reasons. But let's talk about Hollywood and the Hollywood strike, because you imagine just being able to type something in and boom, you have some scene that looks like a movie. How does this impact the creative industry?
Yeah, and when we look back back on the strikes that happened in Hollywood, right? The AI was a specific talking point in those negotiations. And there are trade groups. There was the Illustrators Guild that basically said they expect to see about 20% of the industry laid off or put out of work because of the emergence of tools just like this one. That preceded the announcement of AI releasing this tool called Sora. So there's a lot of concern that illustrators, videographers, visual effects folks will not necessarily be needed in the capacity that they're needed right now. And that's the reason why they're trying to lock down that job security, say, make sure that there's a place for us in this industry. But again, this technology, at least those examples that we just showed, that was released yesterday. So this is moving very, very quickly. And I think even at a speed that perhaps even those in the industry didn't anticipate.
Brian Chung, fascinating stuff. I know you'll stay on it. Thank you.
Making new friends can be hard. I'm Franklin Armstrong. My name is Charlie Brown.
Step aside, Charlie Brown, and make room for Franklin Armstrong. You just caught a peek at Snoopy Presents Welcome Home Franklin. The first black character in the Peanuts gang is getting his very own animated series on Apple TV+. Now, while Franklin might be new to a few of you, it looks like he's it may not look like it, but he's actually a little over 50 years old. Just days after Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, a teacher wrote a letter to Peanuts creator Charles Schulz asking for more diversity in the comic strip, and to the teacher's surprise, Schulz listened. Franklin made his first appearance in the newspaper strip back in 1968. Now you can catch him in the series premiere of his new show starting today. Very cool. Check that out.
Very cool. Love it. Thank you, Joe. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this busy Friday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. We are following breaking news this morning. Russia's prison service reporting that jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny, a longtime critic of Vladimir Putin, has died. We're going to bring you the very latest. Back home, tension in a Georgia courtroom as Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis takes the stand. She's testifying about her relationship with a special prosecutor she hired to lead that election interference case against former President Trump.
No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie. It is a lie.
The DA headed back to court this morning. What we are expecting there? Well, in a separate trial in New York, the fate of the former president's real estate empire comes down to one final decision by a judge. Feeding false information. This morning, an FBI informant is charged with lying to the agency about a claim against President Biden and his son, Hunter Biden. That information has been a key argument in Republicans' impeachment efforts against the president. We've got more on that in just a moment. And addicted to love? Yeah, a new lawsuit claims you might have better luck finding your soulmate off those apps that some think are habit forming. We're going to explain a little later in the hour. Good to have you with us. Let's begin this hour with that breaking news out of Russia, where jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died.
That is according to the Russian prison service. Navalny was a vocal critic of President Putin and was serving a 19-year sentence on charges he said were politically motivated. We spoke earlier with NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel about the circumstances surrounding the death.
So we're hearing from the prison officials as being quoted by Russian state media. So you have to take that with an enormous grain of salt. But the official account is that Alexei Navalny, who was recently transferred to this penal colony north of the Arctic Circle in Siberia, he was only transferred there in early December. Actually, he went missing for a while, and his own lawyers didn't know where he was. His conditions since he was arrested have been getting worse and worse, and this penal colony is known to be particularly harsh. It's a frozen gulag in Siberia. It's often called the polar wolf is its nickname, and it's a facility for men, houses about 1,000 inmates. And according to the official account, this morning, Alexei Navalny was taking a walk that he immediately began to feel unwell, quickly lost consciousness, that prison medical staff reacted, but that they were unable to revive him, and that he died. Vladimir Putin has been informed of his death, according to Russian state media. But The team of his own inner circle have not yet confirmed it, and they are immediately casting doubt on this description of events, the official account by the Russian authorities. One of Navalny's top aides said, "This is, if it is true, and we don't know if it's true, and his lawyer is on his way to the penal colony now, that it is not a case of Navalny died, but Putin killed Navalny." And I'm in Ukraine right now, and the president of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky, just said a short while ago, weighing in on this, that it is, quote, obvious that Putin killed Navalny, that Putin does not care who dies. All he wants to do is maintain his position of power.
Richard, tell us any early reaction we've heard from the U.S. or anything else from Moscow.
So we have not heard anything official from Moscow except this acknowledgement. I suspect we'll be hearing more throughout the day. We are starting to hear from Navalny's supporters. They are accusing Vladimir Putin of orchestrating this, if not directly, if not having him killed today or poisoned in the recent time frame here, but of arresting him, sending him into horrible conditions that were getting worse and worse over time, and contributing his death through exhaustion and poor treatment. The details are unclear. We may get an official Russian autopsy, but it's very hard to believe, particularly these days, what is coming out of Russian state channels, especially when it comes to Alexei Navalny, who was the most outspoken critic, the most feared critic by Vladimir Putin in Russian society. Someone who was not afraid to challenge Putin directly, was not afraid to challenge the entire Kremlin. And it is not just Putin who wields power in Russia. There are many powerful oligarchs. There are many people around Putin who can also influence, can also wield a tremendous amount of influence.
So, Richard, you've been covering Navalny for years. Talk more about the legacy he leaves behind. And with the state of things right now, is there anyone who could even begin to fill his shoes as a critic of Putin?
There is Karamurza, who's another leader who, like Vladimir Karamurza, who's someone I've known for quite a long time as well, who followed Navalny's example. There are critics in Russia who live in exile. So there are people like Garry Kasparov, the chess grandmaster, who is a fierce opponent of Putin, but who lives in the West and is working against Putin and against the Kremlin from the outside, with conferences, with events, with speaking, with political activism. Navalny didn't want to do that. He wanted to stay in the country. So he was poisoned. He had to leave Russia to get medical treatment in Germany after he was poisoned with Novichok, which is a very lethal poison. It didn't kill him. He was extraordinarily healthy at the time. It was something of a miraculous recovery. But then, even after he'd been poisoned, he decided to go back because he didn't want to be an opposition member in exile. Now, maybe that was too brave. Maybe that was the wrong decision, or maybe his legacy will be stronger through his death and through his martyrdom. So we don't know exactly what the long-term legacy will be. But when he went back, that was a very decisive moment, because he knew, everybody knew, that he would be arrested as soon as he hit Russian territory.
Our thanks to Richard Engel, and we will bring you updates on that story as it develops.
Today is a crucial day in court for former President Trump here in New York. The judge overseeing the civil fraud case against Mr. Trump and his business is expected to issue a decision.
It follows yesterday's legal split screen involving two other cases against him. Our senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett breaks it all down.
Hey there, a major setback for the former president in New York. He can no longer avoid at least one of his criminal trials before the November election. But he may have found strategic success in Georgia, a very different case, now hitting a major detour.
This morning, more testimony expected in Fulton County, Georgia, after District Attorney Fani Willis unloaded on the stand Thursday.
It is a lie. It is a lie.
Trying to defend her reputation and save her election interference case against the former president, as defense attorneys try to get her kicked off.
You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial.
Willis, combative at times.
No. This is the truth.
Sparring with defense attorneys over when she began a relationship with top prosecutor Nathan Wade and whether it started before she tapped him to lead the Trump case.
In November of 2021, I hired him. I do not consider our relationship to have become romantic until early of 2022.
That timeline differing from the one offered by Willis's former friend, testifying Thursday their relationship started years before.
You have no doubt that their romantic relationship was in effect from 2019 until the last time you spoke with her.
No doubt.
At issue for the judge to resolve whether Willis benefited financially from hiring Wade, as defense attorneys have highlighted the pair's vacations together.
I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion.
Painting it all as a conflict of interest in order to upend the entire prosecution. While in New York, a different Trump trial moves full steam ahead. Jury selection now set for March 25th. In the case where prosecutors accuse Mr. Trump of trying to bury a hush money payment to a porn star before the 2016 election, an allegation Mr. Trump has pled not guilty to, the judge refusing to dismiss the charges.
I shouldn't be in a courthouse for something that virtually every legal scholar says they don't understand that there's no crime. Even if he was guilty of something, there's no crime.
And in yet a third Trump trial, we now expect a decision later today from Judge Gorin in his civil fraud case. $370 million in a civil penalty on the line, and expect a decision today.
All right, Laura Jarrett, thank you.
More on all the Trump legal trouble. We're joined by NBC News Now legal analyst Angela Cadella. Where do we start? Let's spin the wheel here. We're going to start with the hush money case. So yesterday the judge said, here's the date. It's March 25th. At this point, is there anything that could stop that from happening, or does it seem like this is going to be the first criminal trial against the former president in late March?
Joe, it is really moving forward, and we believe with almost certainty that it is going to start on March 25th. The judge dismissed Trump's motion to dismiss this case, which really was the last roadblock. So jury selection is going to start on March 25th. Now, there are lots of questions, though, around jury selection. How do you ensure an unbiased jury in Manhattan? And we saw in that courtroom the prosecutor and the defense attorneys going over, well, what questions are we going to be allowed to ask? So there will be a lot of fireworks there, too.
Now, let's pause on that one, move down to Georgia. Fani Willis, the district attorney, takes the stand in her own defense, kind of in the middle of her lawyers explaining why she shouldn't have to. She walks in, physically sits down. Two real issues here. When did the relationship between her and special prosecutor Nathan Wade begin? And then did she financially benefit at all for things like having vacations paid for, et cetera? What did you make of her testimony? Did she help herself, hurt herself?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. Those are the two main issues. Now, with the first, I thought that there was some doubt there when she was on the stand. One of the attorneys drilled down on, isn't it weird that he visited your condo 10 times in private prior to the date that you started? But she really didn't give an inch there. Now, the biggest question, though, is the cash. If she never got any cash or never took any trips that she didn't pay for, then it could be a possibility that her argument would be sustained. So she here was saying she paid him back for everything. She paid cash, made it even Steven. If the judge in this case believes this, then she has a shot. So I think she did help herself on the stand.
That's a key reminder. The judge will decide that in this case. So if she is removed by chance, we don't know if that will happen, how would that impact the case? I mean, yes, the case could move forward, but realistically, could it move forward without her?
You're right. So the real question there is, how long will this be delayed? What will happen is there's a council of prosecuting attorneys in Georgia who will then decide who the next prosecutor would be. This is going to take a long time. This doesn't happen often. Also, other prosecutors' office in the state of Georgia, they don't have the resources to try a huge case like this. So there will be delays, and that means the whole trial could possibly go away.
And the judge could decide right away today, or do we expect it might take a little bit of time before we get an answer on this?
He has total discretion here. He could decide today. He could push it off till next week. He could push it off for a month. We'll see.
All right. Angela Cadella, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Turning now to that shooting at the Chiefs Super Bowl parade that left one person dead and at least 20 others injured. This morning, we're learning more details about the two suspects police have in custody, and we're hearing from survivors and from the loved ones of the woman who lost her life. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Kansas City with the latest. Jesse, good morning.
Joe, good morning. A short time ago, we saw the Chiefs championship banners coming down here at Union Station. At the same time, there are now projections up on the building that say Kansas City strong. They're reminders that even as the confetti and the other debris here is being cleaned up, memories of the violence remain.
Overnight, at a candlelight vigil, the Kansas City community grieving and outraged.
You gotta protect us. I'm scared as hell.
After the city's Super Bowl celebration devolved into deadly chaos. Authorities say they recovered several firearms and have two juveniles in custody. But so far, no official word on criminal charges.
This appeared to be a dispute between several people that ended in gunfire.
And this morning, we're seeing more images from the unfolding horror. One mother and daughter hiding under a car and desperately calling 911.
There was gunshots.
This video appears to show the massive crowd at the rally when gunshots first rang out. Some fans begin to flee, but many more seem unaware that nearby, a 43-year-old mother of two was gunned down.
It's a big loss.
Lisa Lopez Galvan was a local radio DJ and huge Chiefs fan. Her family says what was supposed to be a celebration with her son turned into a nightmare. Both were shot, but only he survived.
Lisa was a lot more than just a number. She was a very wholesome, very caring, very loving individual.
Officials revealing of the 22 people wounded, at least half are under age 16. The youngest person shot, 8 years old. In a new year that's only 46 days old, this was at least the 48th mass shooting of 4 or more people, according to the Gun Violence Archive. Another American tragedy, fueling familiar outrage.
What is happening here? Have we become that numb? Have we become that calloused?
Thankfully, Bridget Barden says at one point she was this close to the rally stage. When gunshots rang out, she pushed her 13-year-old daughter to the ground.
I saw the shooter because he was like that, and my daughter was screaming.
So you saw someone with a gun?
Oh yeah, I saw the guns.
Barden says this bullet fragment struck her backpack, just inches from her body.
I've been through some traumatizing things that changed my life, and this is probably the worst.
And a short time ago, Joe, we learned that overnight, Taylor Swift, who has arguably become the world's most famous Chiefs fan this past football season, has donated $100,000 to a crowd fund that is set up to benefit the family of Lisa Lopez Galvan, who lost her life here. Joe.
Jesse, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Now let's head to Washington, where the Republican-led impeachment inquiry into President Biden may be in serious jeopardy this morning. An FBI informant has been indicted by the Justice Department, accused of lying to the Bureau about the president and his son, Hunter Biden. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us with the latest on this. Hey, Peter, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. This is a dramatic new development. Democrats are now urging House Republicans to abandon their impeachment inquiry altogether in the wake of this indictment. The Justice Department, as you noted, says that a longtime confidential FBI informant, a man by the name of Alexander Smirnov, allegedly provided false information about President Biden and his son Hunter to an FBI agent, including explosive allegations that the Bidens took millions of dollars in bribes. This morning, House Republicans' case for impeaching President Biden may be falling apart after special counsel David Weiss charged a former FBI informant with lying about financial ties between President Biden, his son Hunter, and a Ukrainian energy company, Burisma. Top Democrats now calling on the GOP to abandon the impeachment inquiry.
Even Donald Trump's handpicked special counsel, Mr. Weiss, has now brought charges against this confidential human informant who turns out presumably, allegedly, to have been engaged in a fraud from the very beginning.
Those Burisma allegations are the focus of House Republicans' push for impeachment. According to the Justice Department, Alexander Smirnov was arrested in Las Vegas after returning from a trip overseas. A 37-page indictment alleges Smirnov had been a confidential source for the FBI since 2010 and that he provided false, derogatory information to the FBI about both Bidens after Joe Biden became a candidate for president in 2020. The DOJ says the source falsely claimed officials at Burisma said they hired Hunter because his father would protect them, and that the Bidens were paid $5 million each. Following Smirnov's indictment, the House GOP said its impeachment inquiry does not rely on the informant's claims, even though top Republicans have amplified his false allegations for months.
A highly credible FBI source alleges that Joe Biden received $5 million in exchange for pressuring for the firing of a Ukrainian prosecutor.
A source familiar with the matter tells NBC News Hunter Biden does not know the individual who was charged and does not believe he ever met him. In December, Hunter Biden acknowledged past financial struggles, but called House Republicans' quest to impeach his father baseless.
There's no evidence to support the allegations that my father was financially involved in my business because it did not happen.
Also overnight, Hunter Biden's attorney tells NBC News the top House Republicans had been warned that they, quote, built their conspiracies about Hunter and his family on lies told by people with agendas, not facts. Smirnov made his initial court appearance yesterday in Las Vegas. A judge ordered him held pending a detention hearing next Tuesday. Savannah.
All right, Peter, thank you so much.
The West Coast is bracing for even more wet weather. Let's get a look at your morning news now forecast.
Angie Lastman is with us in studio. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Wash, rinse, repeat. That's the story out west as we gear up for another active weekend. If you look at our satellite and radar, though, you might notice that it's mostly quiet for our friends out west. We've instead got a couple of storm systems working through the middle of the country, a little snow. We've got some rain along the Gulf Coast, but the West Coast over the next couple of days is going to have multiple storms to contend with. Here's the first one. This happens tomorrow. We're going to see this push on shore, rain, snow. Those are the things that we're watching be impacting folks across this region here for your Saturday and your Sunday. And we know it's been quite a soggy season across parts of this region. That means that once again, we'll be likely looking at flash flooding conditions for folks across specifically California. As we gear up for the end of the weekend into Sunday, you can see this is 8 p.m. We've got another batch of rain working on shore with this next system that'll impact folks across that region once again as we round out our weekend. Here's the areas that I want you to keep a close eye on. Most of this for the flash flood risk through Saturday is going to be focused across portions of California, Santa Rosa, up north just south of Eureka, but places like Crescent City, Eureka, Redding, down through San Fran, Monterey, you're all going to still have a marginal risk at least of some of that flash flooding to occur too. We've got a good batch of rain on the way over the extended period, 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, all possible. We could likely see some of these isolated spots pick up maybe 5 inches between now and Sunday. This is going to leave us with, once again, all those same impacts that we've seen time and time again this season, the landslides, the mudslides, the washed out roads. That'll all be something we'll have to watch for through your weekend plans. Meanwhile, across parts of the Northeast, we're still dealing with some of these snow showers coming off the lake. We've got those strong winds in the picture. If you're outside walking at all across the Northeast, you're going to notice just how biting those winds are. This is going to last here for a little while longer before we gear up for our next storm system that works from the middle of the country to the east. 47 million people across the country under these winter alerts, but this area is what we're watching as far as the impacts from that Clipper system. This one that you see right here that's going to work from basically Missouri to the mid-Atlantic over the next day or so. It's a fast mover, so just like the one that we dealt with yesterday, it's going to be gone before you know it, but not before it dumps some light to moderate snow across parts of the Ohio Valley. We could see some rain from Knoxville down to portions of the southeast. And then even as we get into tomorrow, this is 5 p.m. It's long gone, but we could likely see some lasting kind of scattered snow showers. But in the morning specifically, we'll see some snow along the I-95 corridor. So New York to Washington, D.C., we could pick up some, again, light to moderate snow, but it could be impactful for travel, especially with folks out the door and getting stuff done on their Saturday. New York, about 1 to 3 inches, I would say, is likely. 2 to 3 inches, maybe up to 4 inches for Philadelphia. Washington, D.C., right around that same kind of range of 1 to 3. The higher elevations, guys, will pick up a little bit more snow, but it'll be, we'll see some flurries as we get out the door for our Saturday plans.
Love a flurry. Thanks, Angie.
Of course.
We've got much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including a new lawsuit alleging all those dating apps actually do more harm than good.
But first, the standoff in Washington over the crisis at the southern border and what's at stake if Homeland Security runs out of cash. That's next. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The Biden administration and Congress are at an impasse over policy changes and funding at the southern border. The president has asked Congress for additional funding to boost resources at the border, but Republicans blocked a bipartisan border package earlier this month that was tied to the funding.
Homeland Security officials are now facing a dwindling flow of money for border enforcement, and House Republicans are refusing to free up funds without sweeping changes to immigration policies.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us with the latest developments here. Julie, good morning. So what's the latest on negotiations for border resources? I know a couple times we've been talking and you're like, this just might not be getting done in an election year, but are there any signs here of a potential compromise?
Yeah, I still feel that way, unfortunately. I mean, this really is a heated partisan political environment. Republicans, as you mentioned, did kill that Senate bipartisan border compromise, which, again, went very far in the direction of conservatives in terms of changing that asylum policy, making it harder for illegal immigration specifically. But at this point, this week, we had reported that Speaker Johnson wants a one-on-one meeting with the president to discuss the path forward for a supplemental aid package for foreign aid abroad. He's still pushing for H.R. 2, that partisan border security bill that House Republicans passed last year that stands no chance in the Democratic-controlled Senate. It is really not clear at this point, guys, if anything can get done on the border, but certainly the situation is still dire.
So we know the president has been in meetings with top aides about border security for weeks. Can his administration bypass Congress in any way and take some sort of executive action at the border?
Well, Republicans have been saying for months that President Biden can close the border if he really wants to with executive action. The issue here, though, is that they need funding. They need resources to make all of this happen. Remember, under the Trump administration, the former president had directed about $2.5 billion to build the border while he took that out of military construction funds in the Pentagon. So technically, the president can redirect funds, reallocate them between agencies. But Trump, of course, faced heavy litigation for this. The Biden administration is concerned as well politically in terms of what they can do at the border. But the bottom line here is Congress controls the purse strings, and they really need additional funding to get anything done, including getting those detention beds to be able to put people in detention rather than release them into the country.
Yeah, tell us some more implications here. What's at stake, Julie, if the Department of Homeland Security doesn't get this funding?
Well, ICE, which is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, they are running out of money. My colleague Julia Ainsley had some reporting earlier this week. They could be $500 million short by May. That's just a couple of months from now if they don't get additional funding from Congress. The thing is, though, we know Congress is considering those spending bills at the beginning of next month in March. Republicans are insistent upon not adding anything that doesn't concern defense spending. Of course, Homeland Security falls into the non-defense discretionary spending bucket. Republicans, again, without policy changes, unlikely to spend more money. It's not even clear if they will get to an agreement on full-year funding bills, and that can certainly hamper the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, and can make the administration's executive actions at the border, anything they want to do, close to impossible.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you so much.
Coming up, looking to get away, maybe you've been eyeing some warmer weather.
After the break, we've got the lowdown on where you can find some of the best travel deals if you're looking for a spring break destination. Stay with us.
Welcome back. If you're looking for love, you might have better chances offline, according to a new lawsuit filed against the parent company of the dating apps Tinder, Hinge, and The League. The lawsuit claims those platforms are designed to addict users rather than help people find their forever love. NBC News correspondent Emily Cadella has more on that. Emily, good morning.
Hey there, Joe. Tinder, Hinge, The League, they've become popular ways of dating in the modern world. In fact, it worked for 1 in 5 couples under 30 years old. But a group of users are blasting those platforms for allegedly rolling out addictive features and putting profits over love.
Whether it's stumbling into a dreamy British bookstore.
Can I help you at all?
No, thanks. Or a matching drink order at a bar.
Can I get
old-fashioned? Thank you. The days of coincidental meet cutes appear to be fading as technology dominates the dating scene.
I'm about to go on my second Hinge date 2 days in a row.
An estimated 300 million people around the world use dating apps, an industry that raked in nearly $5 billion in revenue in 2022.
Hinge wants you to meet someone great, even if it kills us.
But a lawsuit lawsuit filed on Valentine's Day argues that's not the case, and that popular dating apps Tinder, Hinge, and The League are portrayed by their owner Match Group as effective tools for establishing off-app relationships while secretly doing everything in its power to capture and sustain paying subscribers and keep them on app. Ryan Clarkson is representing the 6 plaintiffs.
What about these apps make them addictive?
It's the gamification of relationships, the infinite scroll and swiping features, the use of rewards, the increasingly expensive subscription fees.
Match wholeheartedly disagrees, calling the lawsuit ridiculous and writing, "We actively strive to get people on dates every day and off our apps." An eHarmony survey in the UK found 9 in 10 singles who use online dating platforms believe they are addicted, and 7 in 10 think it has a negative impact on their mental health.
I'd say it was an awful experience.
While criticism of dating apps focuses on adults, it comes as tech companies face mounting scrutiny over allegedly employing addictive features and contributing to the youth mental health crisis. New York City suing several social media platforms this week, who all say they strive to keep people safe. Clarkson hopes his lawsuit and others alike help slow the scrolling in a screen-weary world.
We all need to kind of shed a light on any of these technologies that foment addiction.
So if you're one of the millions of people exploring dating apps, psychologists suggest take things slowly. Look carefully at a profile before swiping. It is not a numbers game. Focus on 1 or 2 dating apps and set aside time for scrolling so it doesn't impede on your entire day. Joe?
All right, some useful advice. Emily, thank you. Well, the recent winter weather might have you thinking about getting away to a warmer place.
That's right. Maybe you want to embrace the cold weather and head to the slopes for some skiing. Well, there are deals for winter travelers out there, but also a few things you should know before you go.
Katie Nastro is a travel expert with Going. She joined us now with some ideas to make your little winter trip go a little smoother. So let's talk about why you should travel during the winter. How is it different from summer travel?
Right. So hear me out. I know this might be a little bit of an off-color opinion, but winter travel is the new summer travel. You can often find incredible deals in the winter and less crowds, better prices. For example, at Going, we found an incredible best ever on this route deal, 207 Miami to London. Incredible, which is really great. And you know what? I was just in the UK. Yes, I had to pack maybe a couple more layers, but it was fantastic.
No bathing suit.
No bathing suit, but hey, you know what? These guys, they don't need to see the sun for a minute. And you just can have a really great experience despite it being a little bit chillier. And you know, there are places, if you are looking at Europe, there are places that are pretty temperate. Malta, Sicily, even going to the Greek islands in the winter, you know, you have less crowds. And hey, summer travel can be really hot in Europe.
Too hot, for sure.
Exactly. Last year we saw that. So just considering your options and knowing that you can often get a better deal and less crowds.
Oh my gosh, you say Sicily and it's like an ache just being in Italy. Right? Oh, what a fabulous place. Let's talk about getting there, because I understand some airports are changing how you go through security. What's going to be different?
Right, so actually it's not every airport, but we've just found out that if you are looking to apply for global entry, if you're located in the DC area, you can now get an appointment on departure. So this means that you can actually show up to the airport a little bit earlier and get your interview done. That's the second part of your interview process, of the process of getting global entry. You know, right now you have to often apply online and then wait to get your interview. It can often be weeks,
of course,
months.
now it's getting easier.
Up to a year some people have to wait. So this is only available in Washington Dulles, but we should see this trickling about the country, and this is really great because, again, getting those appointments oftentimes with your busy schedule can be a bit hard. So this is great news for anybody that's considering getting global entry.
All right, so you get through the gate, but it's winter right now. We're seeing all the rain on the West Coast and the winter storms and things like that. You find out your flight's impacted in some way. What are your best options? What should you do?
Right, here is the Plan B toolkit of winter travel, or just of bad weather travel. So first thing you want to do, they're telling everybody to go to customer service. You're smart. You get your phone out and see if you can actually rebook yourself through the mobile app. A lot of these airlines have it already built in that you can do self-service, and you want to get on top of that quickly because those seats on flights, it's not an endless supply. You want to be, it's a first come, first serve, so you want to be ahead of the game. So while you're standing on line, get your phone out. Second step, if you can't do that on your mobile app, you want to connect with the international customer service line. Well, everybody's on that domestic line, flooding the gates. You're smart. You get on that international line.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if the agent is located in London or Australia. They're able to get into the system, help you just the same.
Yeah, let me tell you, from experience, you see that massive line and you're joining the end of it, it's over for you.
It is over.
Just go home and get on the phone. Let's talk about spring break. Let's look ahead a little bit. So if you don't want to go right now and maybe you want to do like March, April, May, what should we know about that time?
Right. So spring break's interesting because it's not quite peak season. It's sort of this gray area because, and then again, it's not sort of low season. It's kind of this weird in between. You know, we are likely to see more people travel than we did last year. But the great thing that you can sort of bank on is the fact that school schedules are all different around the country, or city to city. So you can almost do city arbitrage. So say you're in New York and you actually can see better prices leaving from Philly, leaving from Boston. Something to consider to sort of save in the end. So we call that sort of city arbitrage if you're looking for flight deals around your children's spring break.
When you look at spring, it always feels like spring break is a little more expensive. Can you still find good deals if you want to travel during the spring?
Yes, you can, but we are suggesting that come March, we're likely to see these prices rise. But right now, you can head from Madison, Wisconsin down to Orlando, 118 round trip.
Oh. Round trip?
Round trip, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You can
One way is like less than lunch.
Yeah.
In this city, anyway.
Right.
So what are you having for lunch?
I get it. New York prices.
Somewhere, yes.
Yeah, you can head from Washington, D.C. over to San Diego. Maybe this is the year that you take that surf lesson for $230, or maybe you want to go international. You can go from New York over to Paris. $435 round trip.
What?
Available dates throughout March and April. Yeah, it's
what airline?
Full service airlines, like a Delta and American. It's you know you have to do. You should be a little bit flexible in your timings, but again, know that deals are out there. You just don't want to wait until the final hour and be left with high prices.
Checking. All right.
Wow.
Going
great
to Katie
info.
Nastro. Thank you so
excited.
much. Now
Thanks,
we're excited to travel.
Yeah. Coming up, history, or should I say her story in the world of baseball.
Yeah, after the break, we're going to introduce you to the very first female voice of a major league team. Her name is Jenny Kavnar, and you'll be hearing a whole lot from her this season. Stay with us.
We are back with some financial headlines. Nike is now planning a round of layoffs.
CNBC's Savannah Hanau has that and other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning to you. Yeah, so Nike is cutting more than 1,600 jobs. That's about 2% of its global workforce. The company is looking to reduce costs as it warns of weaker profits this year, with consumers cutting back on non-essential items. The layoffs are reportedly not expected to impact employees in Nike stores or distribution centers or those in its innovation team. Nike is increasing investment in categories like running, women's apparel, and the Jordan brand. Apple is reportedly ramping up development of new generative AI features for its Xcode programming software that are similar to Microsoft's GitHub Copilot. Bloomberg says Apple plans to release the tools to third-party developers this year. They apply a large language model to predict and complete lines of code and could potentially write code to test apps, saving time and money. And Uncle Nearest is nearing so-called unicorn status. That means when a startup is valued at more than $1 billion after raising new round of cash. Uncle Nearest is a Black and woman-owned whiskey brand that was launched in 2017. It's now the world's top-selling Black-owned spirit and one of the fastest-growing American whiskey makers. Last year, less than 0.5% of all venture capital dollars went to Black founders, guys.
I have to try that one out. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Woman-owned, too. Love
Thank
it.
you. Now to a historic moment in the great American pastime. For the first time ever, a woman will be the voice of a major league team.
NBC Sports California has named Jenny Cavnar the primary play-by-play announcer for the Oakland Athletics. Cavnar will call her first game for the A's when spring training kicks off. And this morning, we have Jenny here with us in studio. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
First, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Has it kind of sunk in yet?
Yeah, it has. A lot of text messages. Just really overwhelmed by the response. Super humbled by it. And, you know, it's something that we've been working for a long time. I called the game for the first time in 2018 and have been doing backup play-by-play. And there's a couple other women in the industry that are doing it as well. And to get the lead job, I'm so grateful to NBC Sports California for the opportunity.
You've been in this business, what, for 20 years now or so? Does not look like you have been. Were there those moments where you just said, oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to happen, if I'm going to be able to break through that ceiling?
Of course. I think when we all start out in broadcasting business, you have no idea where you want to go. You have a dream, you have an idea. And for me, that really was to be a sideline reporter. And that was the representation I saw on television of women, and specifically in the game of football. So I think 20 years ago to today, looking around and the sports landscape for broadcasting and seeing women in so many roles, not just on air, but behind the scenes, producers, directors, positions of power, hiring power. It's so important to know that, you know, the next generation of girls can dream to be anything.
Did you always know that baseball was like where your heart was, but you didn't see that representation?
Yeah, I never saw it on television represented. I think Jeannie Zalasko was maybe doing baseball on a national level, and that was really about it. So I grew up in a household where my dad was a longtime high school coach, and I knew nothing else but the baseball field. So when I got my first opportunity in 2007 to be part of the broadcast team for the San Diego Padres, that was really that moment. Yeah, your hometown. That was really that moment that I thought, wow, I feel like I was made to do this. I've been in this game my whole life.
I mean, your dad was your baseball coach, and one of your children is named after Vin Scully. Is that right?
Yes.
So talk about that. I mean, this is in your blood. This is like, right?
It really is. My husband played minor league baseball. We met through Will Venable, who was a Padres player. He introduced us, set us up. Vin Scully has always just been, you know, so kind, had always been so kind to me. And I had this feeling when I was pregnant and found out I was having a boy that, you know, that would be a cool name to name him after, and got the chance to let Vin know when he was still alive, and he penned a lovely letter to my son that is just going to be so special to hand off to him one day.
That's framed, I better.
Yes, it better be, yeah.
And it is a great name. Okay, let's talk about the new job. So play-by-play announcer, obviously you really got to know a team in and out, and you've just joined the organization. How are you preparing? How are you feeling? Is it nerves? Is it excitement?
Oh, I think it's everything, right? It's all wrapped into one, all these emotions that you're trying to enjoy and be in the moment, but you do have to look ahead, and there's a big season coming up, and so I'm excited to dive in. I'll go to spring training down in Arizona next week, and you know, in addition to all the preparation I'm doing going into that moment of this team, that's where it builds. It's the relationships that you make with the players. And I think that's why I love sports broadcasting. You get to be the voice of the player's story, and you get to share that with fans, and I hope to connect fans to their team a little bit more. It's a long season, 162 games, right? They need to keep coming back for something. So to be able to have that like personal connection to the players they love to watch is so important.
I'm sure you hear from so many girls who are inspired by you. What is your advice to those who are looking at you and want to follow in your footsteps?
Man, I am just blown away, especially when a dad comes up and tells me, I can't wait to share this with my daughter. I can't wait to watch a game with my daughter, because that's how I grew up, with my dad watching sports. But there are so many women to watch in our business right now. Susan Waldman's been doing it for decades for the New York Yankees on the radio, and Melanie Newman's doing it on radio for the Baltimore Orioles. Jessica Mendoza got in the booth. Like, I just think that there are going to be so many more opportunities for these girls, and it is really special to know that I'm part of that conversation of inspiring the next generation, and it just means so much to hear from them.
Oh, so cool. Jenny, congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll be watching, we'll be listening. We're so excited for you.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Coming up, we just can't send you off to your weekend without a look at the latest and greatest in the world of entertainment.
That's because we've got your can't miss list. It's right after the break. Today, we're talking about two titans of pop, Mariah and Ariana, teaming up for a Yes and remix. That is one to bump this weekend. More on that.
That's a good thing, right?
We'll say more words like that right after this break.
Finally, this hour, it's Friday, which means it's time for your weekly can't-miss list. From an all-star action flick to a disturbing documentary, plenty to watch this weekend.
Plus, we have the latest on a musical remix featuring two iconic performers that just dropped overnight.
Joining us here on set for everything you can't miss is entertainment journalist and pop culture expert Brian Balthazar. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Morning.
Let's start in the theaters. Action-packed. Russell Crowe. All Hemsworth brothers, multiple Hemsworth brothers.
Right. It's called Land of Bad.
Okay.
Same words used to describe dating me years ago. Land of Bad stars Russell Crowe as a drone pilot, and he's overseeing remotely this mission, this extraction mission in the Philippines, very dangerous. Obviously, things run off the rails, and it leaves Liam Hemsworth's character isolated, outnumbered, and alone. So now Russell Crowe has to get him out of there, but also help them complete the mission in the first place. Yes, Liam's brother is in there, not Chris, the other brother, and Milo Ventimiglia. I'm sorry, did I just call him the other brother? I hope he's not sorry, other brother. I just spaced on the name. But this is action, all the military action and suspense you could ask for. This is in theaters. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's go nonfiction or documentary, right? God and Country, highly rated, apparently. Right. Tell us about this.
Yes, okay, this is Rob Reiner produced, and this is the story of, the documentary follows Christian nationalism, its impact on politics, its impact on Christianity, and how we view religion and politics as a whole. It's got some of the leading world leaders in Christianity and religion, and it's got 100% currently on Rotten Tomatoes. This is in limited release in theaters, but I really hope this gets to streaming because it may not get the crowd in theaters, but it's really important for everyone to watch based on what everyone's saying about it.
And pretty timely when you consider the election this year. Okay,
exactly.
So we've got something on Apple TV called The New Look, and it looks at the French fashion industry in the 1940s, right?
Right. Okay. So this is the story of Christian Dior's rise and his efforts to dethrone Coco Chanel. This is the time of the height of couture. But the interesting added layer to this is this is when the Nazis were occupying Paris. So there's these two layers of, there's curfews that certain people couldn't work in certain occupations. There's shortages of food. And then we have this battle in the fashion community. It stars Ben Mendelsohn, Juliette Binoche as Coco Chanel, Glenn Close is in there, John Malkovich. And interestingly, they take period songs and they use modern day covers of these songs. So it's kind of this hybrid soundtrack, which is also kind of interesting. But it's a historical story that's also very interesting.
Is that kind of what Bridgerton does? Like it takes the modern songs, but it makes them the orchestral
varying degrees of success. But I do like that. I think that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I really want to see that one. I hadn't heard about it till this morning. Okay, there's a second season of an Amy Schumer show.
Right.
We got the first one a while ago, it sounds like.
It's been years. And of course, there's been a lot of stops and starts. We're going to be saying that a lot nowadays. Like things that we haven't seen in years are finally back. This is Life and Beth. This is on Hulu. Amy Schumer, as we know her to be, like this is her. It's her character personified, really. It's kind of a midlife crisis movie. Who can't relate to that? And it stars her and Michael Cera and Yamaneika Saunders. Shout out to her, who's her best friend on the show. She's a wine salesperson who then moves to Long Island to hook up with be with a farmer. Hook up with Michael Cera's farmer character, that's acting. I don't see it, but it is really
good. She does get pregnant, right? So I guess.
So yes, and it's just if you love the Amy Schumer brand of comedy, it's really good. I really like this one, and this is season 2. You don't have to have watched season 1, but I recommend season 1.
You know what's funny is I've been binging The Bear on Hulu, which is amazing, but so I see promos for this, and it catches you up on season 1. So I've never watched it, and I feel like I'm caught up.
You can just watch season 2 if you want.
There you go.
I like this Brian unvarnished.
Oh my gosh, isn't it scary? Right? Not everyone feels the same way. I always I wonder if this is my last time
We're on the internet. Say whatever you want.
Right? Exactly.
There are no rules. No rules here. All right, let's talk about Ariana Grande, Mariah Carey. It's a remix of Yes and. It's interesting because I saw Mariah at MSG during a Christmas show. Ariana came on and sang with her.
Talk about timing. Yes, they did a Christmas song once before. And Ariana has famously said she's not going to release advanced singles like she typically does before her March 8th debut of her album. But this was just a month since the premiere of this original song, Yes and. Mariah then has joined her in this duet. Lots of harmonies, lots of diva music. It's already charting. The music video has already gotten, or the lyric video has already gotten like 35 million views in 8 hours.
Wow, and
wait,
that's a
what?
lyric
35
video.
million?
Yeah.
Just when they put the words?
Yeah. I don't even think it's the words. It's just the cover. Like, it's just, there's nothing to the video. It's just you want to hear it on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah. So it's obviously this is, and what brilliant marketing. Release it a month later, and all these people are buying the new version. So it's great.
Exactly.
Great.
And then the album
marketing.
comes next. So, all right.
I can't wait to listen.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That was
Always
fun.
great to see you. Have a great weekend.
That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But stick around. There is a lot of news. It continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.